So there's a video online from maybe 10 years ago or so that's just a compilation of Nicolas Cage's best freakout moments, and at some point I hope someone updates that video to include movies he's done since then, this included, because there are a lot of moments from this movie that are worthy of inclusion. Color Out of Space stars Nicolas Cage as Nathan, a man living on a farm with his family when a brightly colored meteor crashes on his property. As Nathan and his family investigate what this strange meteor is, it begins to manipulate and distort reality around them, resulting in a bizarre series of events to take place. This is based on the H.P. Lovecraft short story of the same name, and this is actually not the first adaptation. There have been about 4 other adaptations of this before, although not really as successful. The closest thing we got was a version in 1987 called The Curse, which actually led to a few sequels being made. This version, however, was directed by Richard Stanley, and this is his first feature film, or should I say his first time attempting to direct a feature, since 1996, The Island of Dr. Moreau. That film was a notoriously difficult production, which involved Stanley getting fired within the first few days of filming, and he's been awfully quiet ever since, until now. 24 years later though, this is a welcome return to filmmaking for the director, and a hell of an experience. So let's discuss. The visuals are one of this movie's strongest points. At times, it can feel a bit cheap, like it's not completely polished, but I think that adds to some of the fun. I got the feel of a low-budget 80s horror movie that had obviously fake puppets and other low-budget special effects, but that was the best they can do at the time. But there's a lot of weird imagery here, and it goes hand in hand with a lot of over-the-top violence, which can feel cartoonish. But also, this is a movie that never asks you to really take it seriously. I mean, yeah, at first it kinda does. It'll have at first this soap opera-like music as we get to learn more about these characters, and it takes its time establishing who they are, and that was nice. But this movie starts off at a 1, and it quickly ramps things up, and by the halfway point, it gets to a 10, and it just stays there. There will be a lot of bizarre images, and the color palette, especially of this mysterious color, is really vibrant, and it keeps you interested in wanting to know what's going to be thrown your way next. In fact, even though the original short story was written first, this kind of reminded me of a more sci-fi version of The Shining. Both center around a family haunted by this mysterious force, and there are a lot of strange images and weird occurrences happening one right after the other. And in both instances, the patriarch absolutely loses it. Which leads to my absolute favorite part of this movie. Nicolas Cage. You see, more often than not, his performance is like the one weird element of the movie that otherwise plays it straight, and audiences may be put off by it. But here, this movie just gives him repeated opportunities to just do his thing. Like, hands them on a silver platter. And he has a lot of stiff competition from all these things happening in his house as to what can be the most off-kilter element about this movie. The Force will take these things that he's familiar with and combine them into this one bizarre looking creature at times. And the way he just reacts to all of his surroundings, between screaming and ranting, it's like he's challenging everyone and everything to see who can out-weird each other. Also, I swear, his accent begins to change at various points throughout this movie. Like, 1 minute he's talking normally, and then all of a sudden it almost comes across like slurred speech, like whenever he starts to scream and yell. Like, I can't put my finger on what it is exactly, but I watched this movie early in the morning, not too long after I woke up actually, and I thought I was losing it. Like, I thought that maybe the coffee hadn't just kicked in yet. I actually had to play it back a few times to make sure I wasn't going crazy. Like, it's so absurd, but I love it. Structurally, this movie reminded me of Mandy, another movie starring Nicolas Cage. Both movies start off as a bit of a slow burn before, in the second half, going completely off the deep end. And in both cases, it results in a pretty drastic shift in tone. Like I said, the main reason this movie starts off a bit slower and more serious at first is to establish character, which itself is a good thing. At the same time though, it could have just cut a few minutes here and there, mostly in the beginning and the middle. Sometimes whenever it deviates a bit too much from the main family, it's not boring, it's just not as intriguing. Like, there's a character who's looking into the contaminated water in the area, and there are a fair amount of scenes of him just doing his own side investigation. And these scenes are well acted, I just wouldn't call any of the characters involved in these sequences as inherently interesting interesting as the main family. Maybe if they were established better and didn't feel so much like plot devices. Like, sometimes it'll feel like just a bunch of question and answer sessions rather than an actual character arc. Like, they weren't totally bad, but maybe if they were characters who were fleshed out a bit more, they would have been a bit better. This is a weird movie. I don't know if it'll be for everyone. It hits a certain point and it just becomes this absurd drug trip of a movie. But if you like movies that are out of the ordinary, I think you'll get a big kick out of this. It's got strong visuals, a ridiculous premise, and another truly bizarre performance from Nicolas Cage. This results in a fun time. Color Out of Space gets an 8 out of 10. These are the sort of movies we need Nicolas Cage more in. The more absurd the premise, the more chances of it being just an absolute fun time, because he will crank up the ridiculousness of it. And it's amazing. But let me know, did you see Color Out of Space, or are you planning to see it? And what were your thoughts? Did you enjoy Nicolas Cage's performance, or did you find this movie too weird? And what's one of the strangest movies you've seen that you enjoyed? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, if you like what you see, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time.